I see you have artwork behind you. Can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, I see. Is that like Pumbaa in the background?
Yeah.
Above there, yeah. Hi, I'm Sam.
And I'm Joe, and today we're talking about the 2018 film Ralph Breaks the Internet, directed by Rich Moore and Phil Johnston, our first episode.
Hooray!
But just as a general idea, we really want to appreciate the work that goes behind these movies, like from like an artistic and
a storytelling standpoint.
Yeah, storytelling, and just from a cultural perspective as well. Like, what do these movies mean to people? How have they taken on a life of their own? I do film and video work for a living.
And I do graphic design, I illustrate for a living, and so I can appreciate the art aspect of it.
Later on in this video, we actually have an interview with one of the animators from the film. But before we get to our thoughts and all that and everything, we're gonna go straight to our initial thoughts before rewatching the movie again. So which movie are we doing today?
It is Ralph Breaks the Internet.
And we were just asking ourselves, why wasn't it called Ralph
Wrecks the Internet?
And I think didn't they allude to that in the teaser? I thought I remember a teaser where they even said something like that. Like, he was saying, like, why is it called? I don't remember. If it's there, I'll show a little clip of it right here.
Shouldn't it be Ralph Wrecks the Internet?
Yeah, since he is Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah, but break the internet, it's like a thing.
Right, it's just Wreck the Internet kind of sounds better, doesn't it?
You're not wrong.
I thought I remember seeing this movie with you, but we can't find the tickets.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
No proof.
I thought we saw it together anyway. But we at least both saw it around the same time, I know. I remember really liking this one. I don't remember liking it as much as the first one.
I feel like we're always a little biased towards like the originals.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
The first one was like, it just like set up the world so well. And then like in this one, like we already know what the world's about and
yeah. And I just remember thinking, and we'll see what we think after watching it again, but I remember thinking some of these jokes are going to date well and some of these jokes are not going to date well. But I do remember really liking the look of the movie, so I'm excited to see that again. Even though it hasn't been that long. It's only been since November of 2018. What did we think?
I still loved it the second time.
Yeah.
I don't think it's as successful as the first, but it's still like pretty successful in my opinion.
Yeah.
In terms of the art and the storytelling and pretty much and the humor, you know.
Yeah, it's definitely
very
very
close.
funny.
Yeah.
But I think I appreciated it more this time around, I think because the first time I was watching it, well, one of the things that was distracting me was that like it definitely feels like a baby boomer's kind of understanding of the internet sometimes. Like it feels like a little bit like...
I like that though. Because I almost feel like sometimes Ralph seems kind of like a baby boomer.
Right, that's
true. As far as like, because throughout the whole movie, Vanellope's correcting him on like the terms, you know.
Right.
Like he's like, oh, I thought we were trenching, and she goes, no, trending.
Yeah, like she gets it automatically, even though she's just being exposed to all this.
But it's true because he was, you know, his game's so much older than hers, and so it makes sense that he doesn't really have the understanding of the internet. It wasn't around when he was like a big hit, you know.
Right, and a big part of this too really is just trying to create something that's going to be like relatively timeless, which I realize is a hard thing to do, but something that changes as much as the internet. So, I mean, they even talked about how they were trying to find like examples of memes and stuff like that have had some longevity already on the internet. And I think for the most part that works. I mean, you know, like at the very end of the credits, we have the Rickroll, or the Rec Roll, I guess, which I thought was pretty good. But sometimes some of the things I was like, I wonder how different it would be if this movie was made by like a millennial, or, you know, like if it was from a millennial Gen Z kind of perspective of the internet.
I'm kind of glad it's not though, in my opinion, because I feel like older generations, like they experience that like novelty of the internet, whereas we grew up with it.
Yeah.
You know, there's things we're used to we may not acknowledge. But it's kind of like you know, like our parents' age. You know, they can see like, well, before this we had this technology, and so they were able to experience like I said, the novelty of the internet.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
What other themes did you kind of pick up on in the movie as a whole?
Kind of like toxic friendships.
Yeah.
And you can have toxic traits but improve, you know?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean their friendship had to, like, end or terminate, you know?
And that really did feel probably like the most relevant part of the movie to me.
Mm-hmm.
That did feel like a very modern sort of critique, was this idea, I think even more than just toxic friendship, but I think there was kind of a bit of commentary on toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Because it was the way in which Ralph felt possessive of Vanellope, or possessive even of what life was like before all this happened.
Mhm.
I think that was a really good way of doing it. I know that apparently the internet did not like that, and I saw things like, why'd they make him stupid? Why'd they make him terrible? And all this
Right.
stuff. I don't think the point is that Ralph was stupid or terrible. I think
No.
the point is that anybody can lean into their toxic impulses, and that's what he did.
But I also feel like it makes a lot of sense of their characters, too, because Vanellope craves change and excitement.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense that Ralph, when he faces change, he gets very stressed, you know, and like he gets very possessive over like what he's comfortable with.
Yeah.
You know?
And he like tries to give her some change by making the fake track in her game that ultimately
Yeah,
helps destroy
but
it.
that was a very safe change.
Yeah, it was
you know?
a change that still worked within his parameters of his
Exactly.
worldview. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was definitely handled pretty well. I think maybe he gets off a little lightly at the end, perhaps, after all the damage that he did. But I realize they also have to wrap up the movie, and they have to... And I think that goodbye scene is so sweet and so well done.
Yeah, I think that's just a reality of growing up too, because I have childhood friends who we were inseparable, and then we grew up to have like very different dreams, and no one said, you know, it's kind of like what they said in the movie, friends don't have to have the same dreams, and
Right.
you become different people as you grow older, so.
Yeah.
And that was like 6 years after the first movie, so she's allowed to want something different.
Yeah.
And so is he. He's allowed to want something different.
And it's certainly, like, I think refreshing probably for a younger audience to see, especially given that, you know, again, there's a little bit more idealization of that, I think, oftentimes in movies. It's like, friends forever, and, like, when that's not always realistic. Like, friends
Yeah.
have their, you know, some friendships fade off, some friendships, you know, you only see a person every 5 years
And that's
or something
okay.
like that, and that's okay.
Mhm.
One thing that we both really loved about the movie, too, was the netizens and the net users. So the netizens are like almost like they talked about behind the scenes. They were talking about how they were almost like the Disney cast members, like at theme parks and stuff. You know, they're the ones who live there and run the place, and
Right.
and then you just have these net users who are like these dorky little avatars of the people from the outside world,
Right.
who just kind of bumble about and have these little tiny like walk cycles, and just like are constantly just like kind of blankly staring off everywhere. And I think the contrast of that was, I think, really funny. One thing about this movie too that's interesting is that there's just so much going on, and I think that was, from what I read, a little overwhelming for some critics and stuff like that. There's just so many things they're trying to do, but I do like the briskness of how they do it. I mean, you really get into the story very immediately. There's no really like, they kind of do a little bit of exposition talking about what happened, catching people up, but like, it is mostly like, the first couple minutes you're into the whole conflict. And,
Well, and I feel like they had to do that because there was so much going on. If they had a slow beginning,
right.
you're sitting in a like 2.5 hour movie or something, you
Right.
know? But there was multiple layers to that world of just having like that. There's like your foreground, and there's like you know, a couple dozen characters running around, but then you have like things floating around in the background and all these city sculptures and things like that, and there's multiple layers.
I like their point where they talked about the lower you go into the city, the older the internet references get, which is kind of cool. So like when he was down at the bottom, you saw references to like...
There was an image that was broken.
Yeah.
Like, it was like image not found or something like that.
Yeah, and like old like 90s tech references and stuff like that. So originally the internet was going to be in literal clouds, like a cloud city. Which I think is a cool idea in theory. I can see how that would maybe be a bit impractical, especially you probably wouldn't really get a good sense of location if everything's just kind of like in a foggy... I get like the joke, like, yeah, haha, it's like online clouds, but like, maybe hard to do in execution.
It seemed too much like heaven. They were talking about how they literally looked at a circuit board and kind of based it loosely off of that.
Right, and how that looks like a city when you're looking at it, like all the little lines. And...
Yeah, which was extremely relatable to me because like I used to take apart computers with my dad when I was younger, and I always used them as cities as well. So
Oh yeah.
yeah.
That's cute.
Mhm.
Now, I was wondering before about, like, did they have to license all of these logos and corporations for all the background? Because that felt like a little bit like,
Do you mean the ones that already exist? Like they had YouTube in there for a hot second.
yeah,
Yeah.
It felt very like,
And Google.
yay, capitalism. But in reading about it, they were talking about how essentially they wanted to mix some fake and some real.
Yeah.
Instead of just choosing one or the other, just like they did with the video games in the original movie. Like you have a couple ones that are fake games, but then you also have characters like Pac-Man and Sonic and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
I like that a lot. Even if they had to pay like a little extra money to have.
But they didn't, was the interesting thing.
Oh,
They said it
okay.
in the same way that like when you're filming in Times Square and there's
Mhm.
billboards in the background for things that you don't have to pay for. They didn't pay a single cent. Apparently, that's what they allege anyway. Other characters we like include E-Boy. I love his design.
He's your hero.
I just love the like 1950s design.
Mhm.
Looks like he should be like on a lunchbox or something like that. And you like Yes.
I love Yes, and plus just her design. It's so clever.
Yeah.
And then she had me at when they walked in to first meet her, and Yes finally realizes who she's talking to, and Ralph was like the big hit. Her jacket, like as if it's made of like fiber optics, it like lights up.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
like from an artistic standpoint, like that was
And I feel like she's
that was
wearing-
amazing.
I feel like every time we
Yeah.
see her, she's wearing a different outfit too, like another cool.
Oh yeah, well it's the internet, everything changes, you
Right,
know, and
right. Which is-
trends don't last very long.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yes was originally going to be a bit more of a Kanye West kind of character, a little more braggadocious. And
Oh,
stuff.
and male.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
male. So that was kind of interesting. I wondered if there was a little bit of crushing going on with Penelope and Shank. I mean, maybe I was
I think
reading
that
too
is
much into it.
Fan theory, right?
Yeah, or like certainly, I'm
Mhm.
sure there's lots of fan fiction about that. I mean, I don't know how explicit that was supposed to be, but it definitely felt like maybe like a younger person starting to like realize that they have a crush. I don't know, but
Shank could be younger than Penelope.
technically because she's a newer game.
Yeah, because Penelope's an arcade game which came before the internet.
right.
So technically, even though she's like programmed as an older character,
Right.
could be younger.
She could be.
They
an
could be
older-
the same age. I love that. I love Shank's character too because
Yeah.
she like posed a threat to their friendship without being malicious, you know? And
Yeah.
it's nothing she explicitly did.
It would have been predictable if it was like the standard like, hey, you want to be with us now. You don't forget about Ralph.
Yeah.
You know, like all.
No, she was like a very like wholesome character.
Yeah, and that's
Um,
what the one of the directors had mentioned too, is that it was refreshing to make a character who didn't necessarily have to go on a journey. Like it's implied that she's already done a lot of her growing up and a lot of
Yeah.
her changing, and so
Well-
the fact that she was just confident in who she was and stuff, it was kind of a cool character I think to have involved in that.
And the only reason she was even like a threat to their friendship was of Ralph's insecurity. You know,
Right.
like he saw her as a threat. Penelope loved her.
Knowsmore is kind of a fun character.
Yes.
Who's voiced by Alan Tudyk, who's becoming Disney's special charm in the same way that John Ratzenberger is kind of Pixar's
Mhm.
charm. And originally he was supposed to get every fourth question wrong, but they kind of took that out of it.
Mhm.
And one little attribute in that was that the eyes were hand drawn
Yes.
on the CGI
Yes.
body. And there's some other hand drawn stuff like in the Disney section.
I'm
but
so excited. It makes me so excited to see that. I'm just like,
Yeah, but sometimes it also feels like you're throwing these bones. Like, just give us another
Oh,
2D
I
hand
know,
drawn
and,
film, you know?
it's very unfortunate how 2D has been pushed very much to the background, and you know, there are people who want another, like a lot of other movies in 2D, but it just hasn't. They haven't really either. It's hard to raise money for it,
Yeah.
or
It's hard to prove it's going to be profitable.
right, and they have to present it, and the companies have to approve it, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of factors involved, but it's very unfortunate.
Another thing they talked about was that they actually did bring some of the animators out to drive race cars
Mhm.
to do some stunt driving. Because I remember even we were watching the movie again, and I was telling you like this like car chasing
The car
is
scene?
terrific. Like it's
Yeah.
got some great angles, some great
It's
weight
very
to it.
believable.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I was really impressed watching that again.
Even their weight being shifted in the car,
Mhm.
you know, because as you drive your car, you like either lean a little bit this way or you get slammed against like the other side.
Right.
You know, that was very believable.
And I love that like Disney and a lot of these other studios do stuff like that, where they're really trying to give the people who work on these movies a real sense of groundedness
Mm-hmm.
to it. In the same way, they also apparently drove like go-karts and stuff like that for the little
For the
races.
sugar carts.
Right.
Candy racers? Yeah, I can't.
Something like
Something like
that. Oh, the Ralphs can join against each other. One thing they looked at inspiration for were fire ants and how they
Oh yeah.
join together to create like when it's flooded, I believe they.
Yeah, if they're in water, they'll actually like hang on to each other to form like a little mound and then get bigger.
Yeah, which
It's
is
a survival
creepy
tactic.
and
I don't think it's creepy. I think it's cool.
I
but-
think it's creepy, which I think then also you see that in the movie. The bit that everyone talked about, the bit that went viral even before the movie went out, was the
Oh.
scene with the Disney princesses. For me, I feel like it almost feels like a little bit of test run for a full movie. At some point, I bet within the next 10 years we're gonna have a full Disney princess team up movie, but that's
I kinda
just what
hope
I'm
not.
saying. I also
I'm sorry. I hope not.
I think that'd be really difficult to do. I think for this it was fine because you had like it was a couple quick little gags on top of each other.
Oh yeah.
But you're right. I mean, I can't imagine trying to like give each character an arc and a whole or how they would meet up or whatever.
Right.
but-
Like if I mean yeah, Wreck-It Ralph 2, I think the way they did it was very like was pretty successful. But yeah, if they did a full princess movie, which like again is not my thing. I don't think it would be my thing, but I
Right.
feel like that would be kind of hard to work around.
Yeah, it was impressive they got a bunch of the original voice actors for those characters to come
Yeah,
in.
that's true.
Extending all the way back to Ariel, who
Yeah, I don't think
that was 30 years ago.
I don't think there's a way that I think Snow White's actor has passed away.
Oh yeah,
if I'm
definitely.
correct,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
But it was actually one of the co-producers or co-writers of the movie. She actually did the temp voice for Snow White, and they liked it so much she did the actual voice
Yeah.
in the actual movie. So there was a little bit of controversy before this movie even came out. It had to do with how Princess Tiana was shown in the princess scene. The character design was a little bit different than it was in the 2009 movie The Princess and the Frog. And actually, Anika Nani Rose, who played Tiana in the original one and who voiced her again in this new movie, actually came to Disney with her crew and defended the idea that they should bring it back to the original design. She said, while making The Princess and the Frog, animator Mark Henn based the character's look on her and asked her if there were any features she wanted Tiana to have. And she said, among the first things I said were a round nose, full lips, and that she'd be left-handed. So she wasn't too happy that the character looked, quote, very different with lighter skin and much sharper features, and a lot of people online were also not very happy about that. So she said, my team and I immediately put in a call to the studio to talk about the visual changes. We had a meeting in person with the Wreck-It Ralph team, and I was able to express how important it is to little girls, and let's face it, grown women, who felt represented by her, that her skin tone stay as rich as it had been, and that her nose continued to be the little round nose that Mark so beautifully rendered in the movie. The same nose on my very own face and on many other little brown faces around the world that we so rarely get to see represented in fantasy. So she thanked them for having an open dialogue about legacy and representation, and in doing so, they recognized that her legacy is also their legacy. So I think that's certainly like a big contrast from the Disney of yore with a lot of not so good.
Yep. Not so proud moments.
Yeah. So credit to Anika Nani Rose for standing up, and also credit, I mean, really to the filmmakers as well for realizing their mistake and making an expensive change that late in the game
Yep.
to correct something that should have been corrected. So that's it overall. We're actually gonna now show you our interview with Andrew, who worked on the film. He was one of the animators. We had a good long conversation with him, but we're gonna give you like the boiled down version because we got a little rambling. Of course, we wanted to ask him a lot of questions ourselves, but please enjoy that.
We finished Frozen, so things are a little quieter right now.
I can imagine.
Now we're on Raya and the Last Dragon, and we're just doing animation tests, which is super fun because we can just explore what the characters are going to do, and they're going to move in ways that we haven't seen before. So it's kind of like playground right now, just trying new things. Yeah.
From working on Ralph 2, what is it like animating characters that have already been animated before, that already have pre-established like kind of ways of handling things?
The nice thing about that is we have a whole movie to look at for inspiration and for rules. And a lot of those supervisors who worked on the first one are still here. We had new supervisors, but the old ones are still there to give their input and have their say. At the same time, we want to try and see if we can go a little further somehow with the characters as well. Like, we don't want to just be locked into what we have. But there was rules with Ralph, like he had really heavy hands. So we wanted to keep his hands feeling like they're heavy and not light, so...
I know this is a question you probably get asked every single day, but what is the general process of animation when it comes to CGI?
For us, we look at the storyboards first. There's a storyboard version. So someone has drawn basically the scene that we're going to do. So we look at that, and the director will kick us off and say, okay, at this moment, this character is feeling this way during the movie. Here's what comes before, here's what comes after. Then it's up to us as the CG animator is to make that character act with the actual CG model in the computer. So what we'll do, usually some people shoot reference. I like shooting reference, so I'll go into a reference room and film myself doing ridiculous things that like maybe act like a princess one day and act like a dragon the next, or grab other people who you work with who are better actors than you. So we'll film that, kind of get those good ideas, and then we'll take that performance and put it onto our character. Show the directors, and they'll say yes or no, or we would like this, but maybe they need to be more sad in this scene, for example. So you'll go back and do revisions, and then try and get it with the help of your supervisors up to like a Disney quality level, which means like just appealing, and the movement needs to be rich and almost musical, just to try and get it so it's good enough for approval, and then you start all over again with the next shot.
So you actually have specific rooms where you can do this reference footage?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
yeah, we have a
neat.
reference room with like a checkerboard floor and a big wall so we can see what we're doing.
Oh, nice.
And tons of weird props or like steps and crash pads and mats and stuff just in case you're falling or
So the checkered floors, like do they have a purpose? Like, is that so you can get the perspective kind of more correct?
You can kind of measure a little bit, like, or you can see a little bit clearer what's happening with your character, how far they're traveling, especially if they're coming right to camera.
I see you have artwork behind you. Can we talk about that for a second?
Sure.
Yeah, I see. Is that like Pumbaa in the background?
Yeah.
Above there, yeah.
We've got a Pumbaa. This is a Tony Bancroft drawing, if I'm...
Oh.
I do have one milk call, which is this Pinocchio in the
Oh,
water.
Oh
wow.
my gosh.
That's amazing.
It's good. And then there's one Little Mermaid one.
Aww.
We've got, I'm not positive who the artist is on this scene though, but yeah. And then just some other, Mandy Wickens is a really great character designer. She's got these like, these caveman girls that are pretty fun.
Mm-hmm.
And then like a Simpsons.
Yeah.
My wife is an animator as well.
Oh, nice.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, she's at Disney and we kind of both collect a little bit, so our house is kind of a little museum.
That's okay. That's the best kind of collection.
It's nice when your partner like is into it as well.
Yes, that helps.
Obviously, you really care a lot about like the legacy of Disney films past and everything. Disney is such a unique company in that it has such a strong identity, I feel like. I mean, there's other companies that do, but I mean, everyone knows, can kind of feel what a Disney movie is. Like deep down, there's something that they get about it. And I just wondered, like within that context, what is it like working for a place that has that strong of a, like an idea behind it, I guess?
Yeah, I still feel it. Like, as much as I'm working there and sometimes like the job is difficult, I'm still a fan. Like, I grew up with Aladdin and Little Mermaid, and that's like why I got into animation, watching those movies. And there's still people in the hallways who worked on those movies. Like, I sit right next to Eric Goldberg, who's an animation legend. He did like the genie in Aladdin.
Wow.
Mark Hamill is another animator whose office is right beside mine, and I can take my shots and show it to those guys and get feedback, and it feels like they learn directly from the 9 old men and the people who kind of made Disney great in the first place.
Right.
And then it's kind of like we're the next generation, we're learning from them, and then hopefully there's other generations coming up that will pass on. It feels great to be part of that legacy. You hopefully want to do it justice, like you don't want to drop the ball. Or
Another question I had was, when it comes to, especially in this movie, there's a lot of like crazy effect shots with like the giant like collection of Ralphs and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
What is it like working around those effect shots? Because I imagine because it's different departments, like are you creating it and they're reacting to what you animated, or is it like a collaboration, or how are you working with like the effects department?
Definitely a collaboration for that Kong Ralph. That was, I mean, right when it was first pitched, the crowds team, who usually takes care of a lot of procedural animation and a lot of those crowd things, like, they were like, uh-oh, this is going to be a lot of work. So right away, a team of animators, like a small team, went with those crowds guys and started working on it. So an animator would make like a crawling cycle, and then the crowd effects guy would take that cycle and put it on like 100 people, and then try and put it on this huge Ralph model. So that was, if you could see some of the versions of what that Kong Ralph looked like before it made it to the end, it's like, they were like walking through each other. They were like, it looked like meat a lot. Like all Ralphs were colored, so it just looked like moving ground beef. It was really grotesque for a while. But yeah, very collaborative. All the effects of the buildings being crunched and things like that, and we have Ralph and Vanellope like jumping off those buildings or falling and stuff. So it's all hand in hand, and the supervisors of the effects team will be in our animation daily just to pipe up if there's anything they see that they might want changed, or if things are going to be a problem. But usually everyone is pretty good about just trying to make the best thing possible. So people try to say yes to ideas a lot more than they say, no, we can't do that. It's like, okay, how can we do that? And that was that Kong Ralph was like, I don't know if we can do that, but let's try it.
Is there one shot in your career that you've worked on that you're just absolutely devastated never made one of the movies in the completed form?
I actually had a situation where I had a shot cut, and it was fortunate for me because it was like a comedy shot, and it kind of like didn't hit the mark. This is on Zootopia, and it was one of the first shots I ever did at Disney, and it was like Hops was throwing a snowball at Nick, and she missed him, but just like getting the timing of it kind of like I struggled. I think I did like 16 or 17 versions, and I think finally at the end they're just like, okay, I think like it's good enough, basically, which is like heartbreaking.
No.
You don't want to hear that.
No.
But luckily that shot got cut, so no one ever had to see it, or like that. That's probably like the only case I could think of where I was actually happy where a shot got cut. Frozen 2, it's not out yet, but I had a shot with Olaf that I thought was pretty charming, that was pretty fun, and he was cute in that section, at least I thought, and I just saw like a recent cut of the movie, and I saw that those shots aren't in there anymore, so I'm not sure if they'll be fully cut or not, but it's a bit of a bummer, but yeah, it happens to everybody. You can't take it personally.
It's part of the job.
Exactly.
Any creative work, you know.
But I can see with the Zootopia one, that would be especially heartbreaking, because there's that feeling when you tell a joke around your friends and it doesn't hit, but it's got to be different when you work on a joke for like weeks and then you put it out and it doesn't hit.
Yeah, I mean, at the end, you don't even, like, I did so many versions, I couldn't even tell what was funny anymore or not. Like, you're just relying on everyone else's reaction.
Was there a big difference between the feeling of working on Zootopia versus working on Ralph 2?
I was a lot more comfortable by then. I had also done Moana by then, and when you're there longer, you get more trust, basically, when you're being cast shots, and the shots that I was getting were kind of meatier and more acting shots, or things that I gravitated to more. So I got to do some things in Ralph that were dramatic, or like at the end where Ralph and Vanellope are kind of saying goodbye to each other because she's going to go be in the other game, and they hug, and he's like, whatever, you're getting a little clingy on me, get out of here. And just, there's like an emotion where they're happy and they're sad. They're happy for each other, but sad for themselves. So those kind of like, those moments on Ralph were awesome that I got trusted to do those ones because they're they're important moments. So that was kind of nice with Ralph, where I think for me, I'm still growing as an animator, and I think that just shows like progression from what I was able to do on Zootopia.
Well, that's definitely like hit for us.
Yeah. Did you ever work on like 2D or in addition to your 3D studies and things like that?
Yeah, actually, we had a bit of a break. A movie that we were working on got canceled after Moana, and so
was it the
Wreck-It Ralph?
I was wondering if it was the Jack and the Beanstalk one. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, I did hear about that.
Gigantic. I think it was called Gigantic.
It was called Gigantic. Yep. So that got canceled. So Ralph got moved ahead, but there was still a gap because Ralph needed to work on their story a lot. So we had a bit of time where the 2D, whoever wanted to, whichever animators were there, the 2D guys were willing to do some classes. So a lot of 3D animators signed up for it. Some have drawing skills, some don't. Everyone's got varying degrees of it. So that was a really nice thing. And we actually got to do some pre-viz work on Ralph by doing 2D drawing tests. So some people would do the net users running around, or the netizens, like how they move. Some people would do yes tests, like she's changing clothes and her clothes are changing in 2D. So there's definitely a place for it at our studio. It was really fun. Part of their whole process, like I shoot video reference. Some people just do sketch passes, like they'll draw it and try and get that 2D flair in there, or that 2D sensibility that Disney is known for. So it's definitely a part of what we do for sure.
Do you and your wife ever collaborate on stuff together?
Written like a couple web series and stuff, and we pitched. A cool thing with Disney Plus coming out for us is it gives like people at our studio a chance to pitch ideas and things like that. So yeah, we've put some stuff together. I think we both certainly use each other at work for our shot, like quality control basically. Like she looks at every shot I do before I finish it just to make sure I'm not missing anything, and she sends her stuff to me too. So
Thank you to Andrew for the interview, and thank you, the audience, for watching our first episode. Please be sure to subscribe if you want to see how we review future Disney films. We also implore you to check out our Instagram. It's SmallWorldSamJoe. And actually, if you use the hashtag #NotSoSmallWorld on your story or on a post, we would love to actually feature maybe little mini reviews of our next movie, which is going to be Snow White. Kind of want to go back and forth across the Disney timeline if we can. And if you just do like a little mini review, we might include it in the next episode. So thank you once again for checking this out. Let us know if you have any ideas on how we can improve it next time, or if you just like it how we did it. And we'll see you next time on Not So Small World.